a long, long, long time. You know, and what do you do when you have friends? You beg them to pay their own way and come to Washington, DC.
I said when I grow up, I'm going to be like Cindy. Isn't she amazing?
I forgot to pass the, just if you want, just come up and put your offering thing on the, up here. Put it down on the floor though, okay? She won't care, she's used to this. Just throw money at her.
Yeah, one time I was speaking at one of Peter Wagner's conference, and people, I didn't even say anything about money. They came up and began throwing money, and afterwards I asked Peter how much people had brought up, and he said $35,000, and I said, can I have some of that? It's just an honor to be here. Let's just stand for a second and honor Cindy. My goodness. You can sit down and I think, wow, you know, just being in this conference, I said, God, you really love me because you said the first shall be last. I mean, the last shall be first. So I'm the last one because I watched all these people. My goodness, I don't know if Miranda Nelson is here yesterday, but I thought, whatever she's taking, are you back there? I want what you drink in the morning because I said, I was exhausted. I had to go take a nap after listening to you speak. But wasn't her story phenomenal? You just look at story after story of the nations, and if you sit down next to many of these people, they look like ordinary people. But how many of you know we're ordinary people with an extraordinary God? And that's the phenomenal thing about it. And I've got to watch this time real quick here. And I have the assignment of speaking of the prophetic in the nations. Now, you know, that can be anything. And so Becca went outside of her line so that I can go anywhere. But I'm just amazed. I think the nations are gathered here. And it's just power. I wrote down notes because I have a tremendous ability at rabbit trails. And after listening to everybody's story, I said, I need to get saved all over again. And I said, God, I want a second life. I want a second life to do some of these things that the rest of you are doing. And all I could do was just raise my hand and say, wow, God, you are an amazing God to literally drop so many varied gifts on people. I mean, the gal from, who's in India, raising up 23,000 churches. I thought, I'm exhausted at one. And in need of healing prayer and deliverance and, you know, all that. I said 23,000, I'd probably be in a mental institution. I am a comedian. I'm being paid for this. So I just want you to know that. But I want to say, over the years, you know, I really believe, before I say anything about the prophetic in the nations, love is the bottom line. 1 Corinthians 13, I saw Pastor Kim, and God has put certain nations in my heart, and I'll never forget being in Korea. And it wasn't at her meeting. This is a powerful woman. Probably, I believe you're the most powerful woman in Korea, and I believe you are the mother of the church in Korea. I honestly believe that. I honor you. But I remember sitting there and I was weeping. I began to weep because I realized I began to weep actually for Chairman Kim Jong-un because I understood his roots. And Korea is a phenomenal example of how a wound can cause you to go in a wrong direction. Because his great-grandparents were in the 1907 revival. And out of the bitterness of his great-grandfather being murdered, his grandfather turned against God, turned to communism, and then turned a nation in an entirely wrong direction. I say that the prayers of his great-grandparents are alive and well, and God is going to get hold of Kim Jong-un because he wants to be like his grandfather, who cared about his great-grandfather, who in his heart there is something of God. I've seen it, and I declare that Korea will be saved. Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 9 and 10. When I got the note from Cindy and the mandate, immediately this came to mind. And I'm reading this from the Message Bible. God reached out and touched my mouth and said, look, I've just put my words in your mouth, hand delivered. I read my own writing here. See what I've done? I've given you a job to do among the nations and governments. A red letter day. Isn't that amazing? A red letter day. Your job is to pull up and tear down and take apart and demolish. A lot of prophets are like that. They just look and, they'll kill you. I mean, but that's just the first part. And the second part is we take apart what isn't working for the purpose of building and planting. And so God's destiny, even when he tears down and demolishes in nations, is ultimately to rebuild them and plant them and bring them in alignment with heaven. And we are, whether we realize it or not, we need to realize we're in a time of governments and changing governments. I believe God cares about the individual, but I believe God is dealing with nations and governments in this time. And I want to encourage all of you, don't be complicated. Just do what God tells you to do. You know, God will tell me to do something, and I'm just crazy enough to do it. And, you know, I could think, am I able to do it? And sometimes he'll tell you something, and you'll have a presupposition about what that's going to look like. And I'll never forget, several years ago, God told me to fly to Washington, DC. Nobody asked me to come. He said, fly to Washington, DC, and I want you to shift the Secretary of State, who at the time was Colin Powell, and the other person I'm not going to mention, but he was the Senate Majority Leader. I want you to remove him from office. And so I'm assuming he wanted me to shift Colin Powell relative to Israel. So I'm assuming I'm going to have a meeting with Colin Powell. How many of you know that's the way you'd think? I was the first person to get in the State Department after 9/11. And I got through security, turned right, and I thought, how am I going to get in Colin Powell's office? Guess who was walking down the hallway?
Wow.
Colin Powell. I walked up to him, shook his hand, and said, I honor you, sir, and under my breath, and I said, you will shift your attitude and your position towards Israel. And I walked away. And he shifted his attitude. Majority Leader's office, and I didn't know what to say. I just knew I was to go see him and make sure that he got out of office. So I mean, you know, I have a wonderful, let's tear down, demolish, so we can build and plant. So I called Cindy on the phone. She was just walking out the door. I said, Cindy, I'm here. What am I supposed to say? How many of you know the wine is in the cluster? You need each other. She told me what to say. So I walked in there, and we're nice. We prayed for the whole staff. Then we went over to the wall, and we said, would you mind if we would just stand over over here and just pray for this office here. And I'll never forget Sandy Grady and I walked over there, and this is how easy it is. This is the prophetic in the nations, changing a nation. We just went over there and we read Isaiah 22 where it says, I will rip your office from you. She told me what to say. And literally, that guy was out of office for some crazy reason within a couple months' time. Don't diminish or don't discount little things and how God can get you into places to do things that will change the nation. That changed the nation. That was an example of a prophetic in the nation. But I could have thought, well, you know, I'm supposed to meet with him, and I've got to say, God is so mad at you. He's going to just rip this right. We just went in there real nice, prayed for the staff. They were thrilled, went over, did our job, left, and he left office. Sometimes we think it's real complicated. And I was in Canada speaking this last year, and we were in worship, and I'm a real worshiper. I love worship, and all of a sudden I had these crazy ideas, and they weren't even, I didn't even really feel anointed at the time. You know what I mean? You just feel totally unanointed. And these thoughts were going around in my heart that the Prime Minister was in a big corruption scheme. And then all of a sudden, the stuff started coming to me, and this is going to get uncovered, and there's going to be an earthquake. And I thought, now I need pills. Something's not right with me. And I mean, because I really didn't even feel anointed. Do you know what I mean? Do you ever feel that way? It's like, so I leaned over to Tim Sheets, and I said, Tim, this is what I'm getting. You think I'm supposed to prophesy this? I mean, it's so ordinary. And he said, yeah, because God's dealing with governments. And so I got up there and I said that God is going to uncover the Prime Minister of Canada. And the day that he uncovers him, there's going to be an earthquake. And guess what? God uncovered this early this year, the Prime Minister of Canada, in a corruption scheme. And there was an earthquake that day. So I'm looking at the time. Does that mean I'm up? I'm up. I can't say anything more. I gotta get right off the This isn't fair. This really just isn't fair. Now let me tell you something else.
I'm ceding my 2 minutes to the speaker.
Let me just tell you this. Detroit is the 6th most impoverished city in the nation. It's been said many times, as Detroit goes, so goes the nation. God gave me a very direct, detailed thing I was to do to literally change the government of the city. I followed it to a T. It was crazy. If I was in my right mind, I wasn't. I was in God's mind. But if I was in my right mind, I wouldn't have done it. And the end of it was that I was to go to Tallahassee and complete the thing relative to Detroit. This is crazy. The day that I finished that, what God showed me to do in the prayer declarations, we were in Tallahassee, Florida that day, the mayor of Detroit. We had 40 plus years of corruption in government that brought the city down. We were the 4th largest city in America. We were the wealthiest per capita in America. And the day that I finished it in Tallahassee, Florida, the mayor was taken in, he was arraigned on charges of corruption in his brand new home in Tallahassee, Florida. How could you put that together? You know, you just do what he says. And so I'm going to skip all over all these wonderful notes I have, including my brand new grandbaby. And I know that loves grandbabies, so I just had a new grandbaby who was born on 11/11, and I said, and this is important, I said that she is going to be born early because it's going to be a sign that the baby of awakening is going to come earlier than we think. Awakening is coming to this nation. This nation will be saved, and we have got to follow it all the way through. We are in a massive turnaround. Though you may not like some of the things the president does, listen, God has put him in there. It's not whether you like him or not, it's who has God put in place, and what is his mandate. And I support the president of the United States of America. History. And I'm going to read this real quick. I declare Roe versus Wade is coming down. I declare God is going to change. I declare that the House is going to be unseated. I declare God is going to change the government of this nation. I declare that we're seeing already a turnaround. There's going to be a massive turnaround, and we're going to be a blessing to the nations of the earth. And I declare that the righteous fruit of this nation is going to be restored. And I say to you that you are far more powerful than you think. One more real quick. Micah 2. This is my verse. Micah 2, verse 12 and 13. This is what I'm saying to you. Raise your hands. Did you hear how ordinary what I did was? All you have to do is hear God and do what he tells you to do. Just do it. Just do it. Just do it. Don't even think it's insignificant. And he says, I'm calling a meeting, Jacob. I want everyone back, all the survivors of Israel. I'll get them together in one place. This is like one of those meetings. Wow. Like sheep in a fold, like cattle in a corral, a milling throng. Now listen to this. A milling throng. Where's Shane Hammond of turnaround people, reversals. And then God will burst all confinements. He is bursting confinements. All the confinements you've been in, they are being broken in the power of Jesus' name, because you have heard something that says I can be something because of who lives in me. And I'll lead them out into an open place. They'll follow their king. I will be out in front of them, leading them. Amen. Cindy Jacobs, wherever you are. She left. I've got the rest of the time. Hallelujah. You see, the last shall be first. This is historic. This is historic. You're on the CD we just produced. Brian Deli, isn't that you? I thought that was you. Okay, another one. I thought you left. I was getting so excited I got no time. But let's just honor her. Listen, we need to honor